have somebody that wish he had joined us this Saturday, they can go back. In about a week, we usually post it on our northtexasuas.com. So you can go ahead and look at it again or share it with some of your friends. So we really appreciate it. It's going to be a great workshop today because we're talking about drone deliveries. So I'm really excited about our guest speakers today. So we'll start in about a minute. So thank you again for joining us. And just so you know, for Terry and Mr. Schultz and Jeff, Steve, if you have any questions, just put it in the chat and I'll be happy to address it to the speakers. So feel free. And we'll also put information from with our presenters in the chat. So later on, if you want to contact them and ask them specific questions, this would be a great time. So it is on top of the hour. So welcome everyone to the Know Before You Fly Your Drone workshop. And this is, of course, sponsored by the North Central Texas Council of Governments. They convened the North Texas Unmanned Aircraft Systems Safety and Integration Task Force. This is basically to mitigate any reckless UAS operations and promote the safe integration of UAS technology into the DFW area. And today we actually have Kendall Prozac from Wing, and Wing has done some amazing things here in North Texas area. So Kendall, welcome. And I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about Wing and what you guys are doing in North Texas.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I put my contact info in the chat to start so everyone has it. And just a little bit about me. My name is Kendall Prozac. I lead up our local policy and community affairs team here at Wing. And what that means is I basically go in and make sure that we have good regulations, make sure the community is really comfortable with what we're doing and elicit feedback. And it's a lot of education because, as you can imagine, as drone hobbyists yourself, when you did hear the word drone in the past, generally people would think of things like, Warcraft, and that is not what we're doing with our drones. It is a huge reintroduction and re-education of how we are utilizing our drones, and we want to make sure people are comfortable with them. So let me share my screen.
Yeah, and I think that's very important, especially with the recent attack on the Taliban. They always equate drones as doing terrible things. And this is why I'm so excited about your program, because it's like Christmas every day with your drones. Okay, we can see that.
Well, wait, one second.
Okay.
I was clicking the wrong tab. That was.
So how many people are employed by Wing at this time? Oh, you're muted. There we go.
That's a number I don't even know. I know it's growing every day, but we have a global presence everywhere. So I will get into all of our areas of operation, but our headquarters is out in Palo Alto in California. So I will kick it off. And please feel free to ask questions along the way. I'd love to make this a conversation rather than me talking at you for an hour. If you have them in the chat and I don't see it, please, Maggie, just stop me and jump in, because Absolutely. Like I said, I will make sure Absolutely. You all have the information rather than me not covering something that you have a question about. So Wing, if you're not familiar, our mission is aviation that benefits all. We are seeking to improve speed and access to goods to make delivery safer and a more sustainable opportunity for everyone. We create the preferred means of delivery for the planet through those different ways. And with Wing, I really like to kick off with a story in all of my presentations. And this is Greg Albright. He is a Little Elm resident, he's actually a Frisco resident here in Texas. And I met Greg Albright really early on in my tenure doing community outreach here in Texas. And Greg, he immediately came up to me at one of the events and said, I think this is a really fantastic opportunity. Like, tell me what you need. How can you utilize me? Because I'm an early adopter. And I talk to my kids about this all the time. Technology is, something we live and breathe now in the 21st century. And he has two little kids, I think two under 7 or 8. And he always is trying to explain to them when he's flying their drone, just a hobbyist, like, this is the future today. We are living in it now. And Wing popped up and he's like, oh my gosh, I need to jump on this bandwagon and like really help my kids understand that, this age of the Jetsons isn't so far away and the future isn't some crazy, number of years down the line. It's happening now. So Greg Albright is those people that we're always trying to find so we can, have these conversations to help say, hey, you really get it. How can I help other people understand what it is that we're doing? So about Wing, we design, manufacture, and operate custom delivery drones. We launched the world's first on-demand drone delivery service. And we were founded in 2012 as an Alphabet subsidiary. And then, of course, delivering real products to real people on 3 continents. And, all this is here to say, I have to kick it off with our story and our history and who we are. So in 2012, we were founded in Google's Moonshot factory. It's called Moonshot or Google X. And basically that's this incubator within Google of where all of these projects go to live and hopefully breathe on their own. Some companies you might be familiar with and you might know are Waymo, Verily, Wing, Google Fiber, things like that. So you go into this incubator and you take some time and you say, hey, can we graduate out of Google and become our own company because we want to change the world. So this all started drone delivery with the idea of someone say, we want to make people's lives better. How can we do that? Let's start with AEDs, defibrillators on scenes. Not all first responders have them. In high school and college, I was a lifeguard. I was AED certified, but if I was a first responder, I didn't have one personally in my car with me, so I couldn't have helped. So the dream was, and still is, I could pull up my Wing app. I could order a drone with an AED because I'm AED certified. I could go help these people. Our engineers started to think, and someone finally raised their hand and said, don't you think we're going to create a lot more bad than good? It's going to be a lot more havoc out of the gate because we need people to understand, like, drones aren't bad. Also, what if somebody doesn't know how to operate the AED, and all of these other things started to pop up. So someone said, okay, let's get people comfortable with the idea of delivery drones and just drones in general, because there are a lot of drone hobbyist communities, but our drones do look very different than the little DJI drones. So we started to switch that script and we said, okay, let's move on and kind of switch and pivot. And then we started to create the delivery drone that we know and love today. So a little more on our history. This is what I'm talking about, 2012 to 2017, we were in that Google X facility. And then after that, in 2018, we finally graduated. We became our own company. We're Wing Aviation LLC. So think of it as a family tree. It's Alphabet, Google, and we are Google's sister Wing. And then in 2019, we launched, actually, let me back up. It's not even on here. In 2018, we launched our first market in Australia. So we have a global presence. Australia was the first ever place to have drone delivery, which is crazy awesome. Then in 2019, we were, of course, working with the FAA, and we were first issued the Part 135 air carrier certificate. And that also led into our first US market launch in Christiansburg, Virginia, right outside of Virginia Tech and Blacksburg. And then 2020, now we're looking to scale. And of course, a lot has happened in between, which I'll, get into a little bit more. So I love showing this slide. This is where we operate on a global presence right now: Helsinki, Finland, Australia, Christiansburg, Virginia, and of course the DFW Metro, and Frisco and Little Elm. And I like this slide because each of these, are very different geographically, and they're very different communities. Every city, every demographic has a unique need. We're not a one size fits all service. Even before COVID, we were trying to solve for people who are homebound or aging in place, or a single parent who doesn't have an additional minute to spare to run to Walgreens because they already forgot, Theraflu and toothpaste for the 14th time this week. So we're really trying to look to fill the gap where goods and services can truly make an impact to those residents in different communities.
Kendall, I have a question for you.
Man.
You see the different places that you guys are now. Is there a huge difference between, America with the FAA as opposed to the rulings in the different countries? And was that one of the biggest challenges that you had?
I would argue that the FAA is probably our biggest challenge here in the US, between you and me, because it is a lot harder. So in Australia, for example, we've been operational there since 2018, and it is our largest market. We run a drone about every 25 to 30 seconds there, and we're nowhere near that scale here in either of our communities in the United States. It's truly a slow ramp up to get that community acceptance, because we recognize, especially with COVID, I think a lot has changed with how we have planned and how our operation is working. People just started working from home, and I would argue now, like, most people are hybrid, if not, like, I don't think a lot of people are in the office all the time. So that means, right, we're flying during our business hours into sacred spaces. We're coming into your residential area, and yes, it has a sound. It's no louder than a delivery truck coming down your street or a leaf blower or something like that, but it's a different, unique noise. And we want to make sure that residents and community members feel safe and okay and are able to provide us that feedback. Whether it's noise or package or goods, partners, anything like that. So a long answer to say, yes, I think the FAA and CASA are very different. CASA in Australia, they really allow us to say, hey, yep, you can operate. Let's kind of see how the spaghetti sticks to the wall. And if something's not working, we can change it. And that's not what we've experienced here.
No.
So Texas, we're all here in Texas. And I didn't say I live in Austin myself, so I'm a Texan too. I'm up in Frisco and Little Elm all the time, so that is my second home as well. So like I get the challenge and the huge point of pride that we wanted to come to Texas. That was really big for me, for myself. So this was kind of like a crawl, walk, run. You saw that last slide. You saw we were in Helsinki, we were in Finland, in Australia, Christiansburg. Well, DFW is huge, right? This is the first time we're operating in a major US metro. Like, this is our running movement right now. So a lot of people ask me why Texas, and it's a huge point of pride as Texans to be early adopters when it comes to innovation and technology. So that was like a huge first thing that we really understood about the community up here. And then when we started to really dive in and look at Little Elm and Frisco, we knew that they were a welcoming community and a very densely populated area, open to technology and innovative ideas. Of course, the beautiful weather, minus like these 106 days we've been having a little bit of late. But with all that to say, also looking at trends, Uber Elevate was there. They had the robots, I think they're called Starship, automated vehicles. So it was kind of a no-brainer for us to pick that area of DFW to focus on as we continue to expand out, so we can truly understand how that community accepts us or what their feedback is before we start that growth plan. So with that said, we actually launched in Texas April 7th, which is huge for us. So I'll kind of get into that. But before I keep talking about what we do, I want to show you a quick little video of what the service actually looks like and how you might utilize it.
I think the volume needs to go up a little bit. A little bit more.
The the audio on that's just kind of like a little beboppy music. You weren't missing any talking. But I apologize for that because it is good music, so I can I can send it later. But I like to show this because our drone operates a little bit differently than our competitors. Our drone, as you can see, it hovers at about 23 feet, 20 feet, and then it drops the tether down, and the package is gravity. Once the package hits the ground, it unhooks itself. The tether goes back up into the underbelly of the drone. The drone flies back home to a nest. That's where we call our facilities, where the drones sleep at night and where we operate. And that is very different than what we've seen our competitors doing. We'd like really to take the human interaction element out of it, so you're not second guessing, oh, how do I interact with the drone, or what do I do? And we found that really works for us.
Kendall, what have you guys been delivering in the Frisco area, Little Elm and Frisco? And is there a weight limit?
Yes, good question. So there is a weight limit. It's 3 pounds, so not a lot. We're really not, partnering with grocery stores at this point to be able to deliver your probably 50 plus grocery order for the week. It really is for convenience. Like, I like to think of it as reshaping how you utilize your vehicle. You might be at your office or at your house and you say, hey, I really need a sandwich for lunch, or I'm just dying for some Bluebell ice cream. Rather than you getting in your car and making an additional trip, reframe that. Oh, how else can I get it? Is there like a DoorDash on the street? Is Uber Eats an option? Can I call it via drone? So that's kind of how we're asking people to reframe it. So 3 pounds is that there's generally about under 10 minutes from the time you order your thing and we pack it. It will come to you in under 10 minutes. Our fastest delivery is 2 minutes and 47 seconds. And then back to your question about our partners in the area. It's Walgreens front of house. Prescriptions is a little bit harder because of HIPAA violations, but something that we hear feedback from all the time and something we're really working toward to add into our arsenal. Bluebell, that's why I mentioned them. So really good for emotional and the health. And then Easy Vet, which is pet medication, and then Texas Health as well. So we've kind of taken like really a health approach here in Texas and put on some hometown partners, because that was the feedback that we heard from the community. It's not always going to be like that. And then our partners in other areas are very different. Again, kind of going back to the top of the conversation, our partners change based on where we go, but we're really looking for a lot of other partners to be able to serve us in the community. And
well,
I can drop this in the...
I can definitely see like the COVID test still. I mean, we're still in unfortunately 2.5 years into it, and we're still having reoccurring COVID. And so, not being isolated, not being able to go out to the store to even pick up a test, this would be fantastic.
Yeah, and that's what we heard a lot of. So in Christiansburg, when we launched, it was right before the pandemic started, and nobody in their greatest mind and imagination knew that this was coming. So we launched in, I believe it was October of 2018. We had, about 6 months before the pandemic hit. And there's, our first couple, Paul and Susie, they're in their 80s, and they told us we were too late with drone delivery, because one of them had a broken leg at the time, and the other can't go out and drive at night because she has bad vision. So like, you're already too late. And then of course, 6 months later, COVID happened, and it was really funny because they're some of our biggest customers there, and they're 80 plus, and people think that, folks who are older would give us the hardest time or the biggest challenge with bringing in this new innovative technology. And that is not what we've seen at all. They utilize the service more because they're either homebound or they don't want to go to Walgreens to get things like COVID tests or Theraflu or whatever it is, just because they know, hey,
Sure.
I don't want to be spending an extra 10 minutes in my car to go drive to Walgreens, go in the store, come back, do this, that, and the other. But then, I have a compromised immune system as well. So it makes more sense for me to order via drone.
Absolutely. What about the beyond visual line of sight? Are you guys working with a waiver now, or how do you access? You said, is there a mile radius? I mean, you're probably going to be talking about this later on, but I was just wondering, how do you operate with that?
Yeah, I do have like a few slides on that. So if I can
Okay.
talk about that there, I think
Sure.
that'll be helpful. If I don't cover it, please like bring it back to
No
me.
problem.
Okay, cool. So this is our aircraft, like very rudimentary, but I just like pointing this out because it is a hybrid plane and a helicopter. So it's really different. Of course, the wing itself is an important part of the airplane flight mode, but highlighting it would have cluttered the diaphragm. And the wing supports the full weight of the aircraft only at near cruising speed because of the hovers and the low speed. So all this to say, we truly believe in redundancies and safety at wing, and it operates with the propellers on the top. It hovers up like a helicopter. All of those propellers go off. And then these front cruising propellers, the two on the front, they start going once it's at cruising altitude, and it flies at 65 miles an hour to your home. And then the other thing I like to point out on this slide is you can see that there are 3 propellers in each quadrant. If one propeller goes off in the top left and one goes out in the bottom right, we can still fly. Same if there's a propeller that goes off in all 4 quadrants, we can still fly. We're continuing to fly as long as like 2 don't go out in one quadrant. And we just add that in for backup safety. It's not necessary. We just like to have that added in for our features for our aircraft. So how does wing delivery work? Very similar to like a DoorDash, Uber Eats, Postmates, something like that. You would download the app on your phone. It's called Wing Drone Delivery. And then you see a marketplace. You would be able to click on Walgreens, drill down into the marketplace, say, hey, I'm feeling some M&Ms and maybe I want a Gatorade today. You add those items into your cart. Then you would go to the next screen, you type in your address, and this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Based on your plot of land, you would see, hey, I have a delivery zone in my backyard, or maybe I have one in my front yard. It really depends what your plot of land looks like. Also, if you have a swimming pool or huge trees, bushes, like any quote obstacles. So our system is constantly surveying that to be able to find the best delivery zone. And you can think about it as like a picnic blanket, a 6x6 space that we're looking for to make a safe delivery. And remember, we don't actually land the drone, it's just the package. So we want to make sure that there's enough space for us to get there safely. So once you put in, let's say you say, I want delivery zone 2 because I want to stay in my PJs. I don't, you want to go into my front yard and I just want my stuff in the backyard. So once that happens, you check out, then the drone is called on our end. So on our end, it's called fulfillment, and the merchant prepares the order. So at Walgreens, a Walgreens employee in Little Elm would actually be walking the store and packing your hex tote for you. Once that is done, they go out to the drone facility, the nest, they call the drone, and then the opposite happens. The drone comes up, the tether goes down, they hook the box on, box goes up, and then it flies over to your house and comes back to us. So that's what happens. And then
Well,
here we go.
I got a question,
Yep.
actually several comments from Steve Andrews, and he's talking about, the AED. The fire department, Frisco department, has a fast response time. How does the delivery time compare? In other words, what's the difference between, like if they call 911 as opposed to having a defibrillator actually, delivered by the drone?
So I don't want to get too hung up on the AED because we don't use that use case at all. That was just the original idea for us, for our business. And again, like then we pivoted and decided commercial goods would make more sense until we get community to understand, like, these are delivery drones. They're not survey drones. They're not hobby drones. They are a mode to get you goods. So with that, we don't do the AEDs, but our delivery time is about 10 minutes. So
And then he
I
was
would
saying
still
like,
argue that's probably faster than
yeah,
first responders
yeah.
in
And
some
then
places.
my other question is, this is Steve again. As you can see by my background photo, I'm in a hot air balloon community. Your flight level is 400 feet and below. Is that altitude, excuse me, that is the altitude we use for launching and landing, and our landing approaches can be very long. What are you doing to avoid air collisions with balloons that are flying in the Frisco Little Elm area?
Yeah, great question. So I can't talk like a ton about that, but I can give you Tariq. He's our chief pilot. He does a lot of this outreach. So you're correct. We have a waiver that allows us to go into airspace up to 400 feet. We generally fly around 150, 200. So we're never at that maximum. Again, we always give ourselves a buffer. If you can't tell, that's like a general theme I've been saying, like safety, safety, safety for wing. So we have that additional buffer, but we have ADS-B on our aircraft. I know that you don't on balloons. So that is something that Tariq, we've done some outreach. Let me back up actually. I've done a lot of outreach for community members, and I've had balloonists come up to me saying, hey, we actually launched like kitty corner from this park. How would you know that we're in the airspace because we don't have ADS-B? That's not something we're looking at. And we basically default to you. And now we're on a lot of those balloonist rosters. So we'll make sure that, hey, if they have something going on, we just pause our operation. So there's a lot of communication with those. And then for other companies, you know, of course, they're like helicopters and flights and other drones and things like that. Our pilots, they're not really pilots because it's an unmanned aircraft that we fly. It is completely autonomous, our aircraft. So our pilots, they're really kind of air traffic control in a sense. They're looking at weather data, obstacles, what is in the airspace, and they're able to then communicate with the drone in the event that they would need to, but they're not physically operating the aircraft.
Yeah, and a lot of our audience are at least 107, you know, pilots, so they understand that. The other question is from Jeff Duncan. In regards to, you know, you showed us the model that you used, the drone that your company Wing has designed. Is it powered by lithium batteries, or how is it powered? And then how long does the, you know, the power last?
So that's some proprietary information, of course. Like, you're asking great questions. It's just information we don't always share. I can share that, and you'll see it in the next few slides. I'm going to show you what the nest configuration look like in DFW, because our Frisco station nests compared to our Little Elm nests look completely different. And I'll go into why that is. But basically, when the aircraft is on the pad, it is charging, just like, you know, really, if you're at home, you're probably charging your phone. So the drones are always charging when they're not in flight. So I don't know how much battery like it takes or how long it takes for it to get up to 100. I'm sure there are other factors like weather, heat, how long it was in flight, those kind of things. But I will also tell you there are 2 batteries in the aircraft. Again, in the event that one of them goes out, like, we have the backup battery to take over.
Fantastic. Thank you for answering those questions. I appreciate it.
Of course. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so our regulatory first for Wing. So this was one we already talked about, Part 107, reliability, BV BLOS. So with this, I think this comes back to your question of what are our waivers. So yes, we are able to operate beyond visual line of sight. This was a waiver we really fought for because, you know, in terms of our operation, we are allowed to fly up to 6 miles, so 12 round trip. We don't. We cut that in half because we want, again, just like make sure we're doing everything right. This is the first time we're flying in a major US metro, so we scale it back a little bit, but we do have capabilities to go 6 miles. I will also tell you, we have visual observers and they can see our entire flight duration. So even though we can fly beyond visual line of sight, and we do, we also have visual observers just because that's the added need for us right now.
Well, I think it's really important for the general community to see the positive things that come out of drones. And, you know, for you, your company to take those precautions says a lot about your company because, you know, I really, it's the unruly, the ones that don't follow the rules that really ruin it for the majority of us that we do follow the rules. And, you know, we are very conscious of the reaction to the general public. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. So another first for us in the US, we are the first US air carrier approved for commercial drone delivery under Part 135. So usually I have to tell people what this means, but I think everyone on this call knows that. So you know how much of a big deal that is. And compared to our aircraft, it is, you know, largely styrofoam. It weighs 10 pounds and it's 4.5 feet by 3 feet. So compare our aircraft to what a general Part 135 aircraft looks like. It's pretty phenomenal that we got this, you know, this approval, and we worked really hard to get it. So we're really proud of this. Another first for us is our first aircraft mission that flew in Virginia. It's actually sitting in the National Air and Space Museum in DC, which is really cool. I'm actually going out there next week and I'm going to go see it because I just think it's really awesome. So that's really fun for us too. The last thing is, I've mentioned this a few times in the call, we are the first US air carrier approved for commercial drone delivery in a major metropolitan area. And so I will kind of get into this a little bit, but this is our nest in Frisco Station. And I just want to go back one more slide so you can see the drone pads right here. Somebody asked about the batteries. So you see kind of like a big QR code in between the pads, each of them.
Yes.
The QR code is what we call geofiducial. And that basically says, hey, this is your pad. This is your home today. This is how they know how to get back to that charging station. And then the one that is between those geofiducials, that's their charging pad. So every time the drone's sitting on that, it is charging.
Was that the Star, the Dallas Star building behind?
Yep.
That's
Yes.
what I thought.
So that is the Cowboys practice facility. So you can see like how close we are. And then to the left-hand side of the picture, that is the Dallas North Tollway.
We call that the Jerry world.
Yeah, so we actually operate on an old helipad, which is great for us. Rumor has it, it was Jerry Jones's. I don't actually know whose helipad it is, but that's where our operation in Frisco Station is. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into the nest. This is our Walgreens nest. This is over at Little Elm. This video doesn't have any sound, but as you can see, this is such a small operation compared to what I just showed you. We are truly next to their, what's it called? Their drive up, their drive through. And you can see here, there's a shipping container and then our pads are set up. So this is a lightweight model. This is really, you know, another first for us in DFW. We wanted to show, one, you can scale drone delivery a lot. We call this drone in a box, and it's a lightweight model. All it is that shipping container, and then it's a couple pads, the geofiducials, charging, and the drones itself. That's all it is. And here, we're not actually the ones who are pick-packeting the drone. I'd mentioned earlier that we train Walgreens employees for this, and they're the ones who are going through the store and saying, oh, you need Allegra and you need, I don't even know, toothpaste and toilet paper. And they are the ones that put it in the box, and they're the ones that load it onto the drone.
I know there was a question from Maria about how many do you employ? Let's see. How many pilots and observers do you employ approximately? Because like you said earlier, that you know, your company is growing, especially the more general public acceptance, the more you'll see this operation. So, but just in general, you know, can you tell us a little bit about?
I don't have an exact number, but it's growing every day. At the end, I'm going to talk about careers and things like that. Like really, if you go on our website, you'll see right now we're hiring for a ton of ground support pilots. And then of course, like the pick, pack, and more like crew members, those are being trained by Walgreens. So that is what's going on with Walgreens. They're the ones that are hiring for that specifically at this store. So I'm not sure how many they have on their staff, but we train pretty frequently, especially as summer came and, there are more college students or high school students who are getting jobs. We were doing training pretty often for those new Walgreens employees because it's not our staff that's doing it.
What skill set are you looking for, in regards to employment?
Yeah, so it really depends on what the role is, but I would say big things that we're looking for are like the soft skills, quote unquote, people who are problem solvers, people who can negotiate or can say like, hey, this is the problem we need to focus on today. We don't need to be looking at X, Y, and Z. So prioritization, leadership, because a lot of those things like Part 107 or the hard skills like CSS, Python, programming skills, we can teach you to do that. We're truly looking for a culture fit for people to come and people to stay. And that's another huge reason we came to Texas. Like the workforce, we want to keep our employees here. Like there is an incredible workforce here in Texas. Why would we go look for people, in like Nebraska or Minnesota or wherever when we know that there's great talent here in Texas, which also in that same breath to say, we hire a lot of remote employees. So even if you do live in one of those other places, that doesn't mean we wouldn't add you or we wouldn't take you on and say like, well, you live somewhere else. Like, no, that's not in Wing's philosophy at all. And then I think I saw somebody else mention like pilots and observers. Everything's remote for us. So yes, we do have a Dallas crew based here, but our pilots don't necessarily need to be in Dallas to be flying these flights specifically.
So they can actually, if something does go wrong, they can actually intervene and land it safely, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then Mr. Schultz said, which area of the U.S. are next for delivery? Anything outside of Texas? Do you have a roadmap of what's up and what's coming?
That's top secret information.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. I don't know yet either. We're actually going through like a huge planning session. So what I can share is, hopefully we'll be able to share a lot more soon. But our planning's going up for the next 2 years and we're trying to make a lot of moves. And I know that Drone Express is on this call and you'll be hearing from them. But I think as drone industry and like commercial delivery for like the drone industry in general, what a lot of us are trying to do is work with the FAA on a lot of area approvals to say, hey, if this is going to be accepted by community and really utilized and picked up as a viable, service, we need to get area approval, not just like these one-offs. So I'm hopeful that we can push toward that and then we'll be able to unlock a lot more cities or rather areas at a time and make it more of a rapid expansion. Because as you can see too, from our timeline, we talked about at the beginning, Christiansburg launched in 2019. We didn't launch Dallas until this year in April. And largely a lot of that was because of COVID, of course. But like we would like to be a lot more rapid in terms of our expansion.
Well, of course, and using this example, like a lot of our members are from the Frisco, Little Elm area, the DFW area. Basically, it is highly populated. So this is kind of newer for the FAA to allow certain UAS operations to happen in a highly populated area. So that makes a lot of sense. You're trying to check off all the things to make sure that, everything is running smoothly and it's safe. And again, general public perception is so important. And, you don't want to make mistakes. So they only focus on the negative and not the positive. So thank you.
Absolutely. This is an image of, we kind of saw it earlier, of our nest over at Frisco Station. And you can't see it really well, but I wanted to show how different it is from the Walgreens over at Little Elm. So you see the pads And then you see those little shipping containers to the right-hand side. That is our operations container and then our merchant container. So we physically keep merchandise from Texas Health, Easy Vet, and Blue Belt on site. And then we are the ones to pick, pack, and fulfill those orders at this location. This clearly has a larger footprint, bigger operation. So we're really trying to move away from things like this and do more of those Walgreens. So it's co-located with a business or maybe multiple businesses in the future.
I always think of nests being on top of a building. Do you guys ever land and take off on top of a building?
Yeah, one of my last videos kind of shows a recap of 2021, and you will see we also, one of our first, I believe, first drone operator as well, was launching a rooftop delivery in Australia. We're on the top of malls there because then a bunch of businesses can say like, yeah, I want to use the drone. So we have like runners that run up to the top of the mall, load the drone up, and then, you know, do it again, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's great for visual
have that job
observer.
in high school. Yeah.
The visual observer, you know, you got a better eye on, you know, what's the operation itself when you're up higher, obviously. So.
Absolutely. So this is kind of, you know, Wing Solution benefits everyone, consumer, businesses, and community. Of course, we've talked about the speed, 65 miles an hour. A big question I get asked from people is, hey, like Blue Bell is one of your partners in Texas. It's hot as heck there. And how is the ice cream not melting? Like, do you put insulation in the box? What's that look like? The answer is no. By the time we take the pint of ice cream out, we put it in the hex tote, and it is loaded on the drone. You are getting it in under 10 minutes. Also think your time in the grocery store, you probably end with the frozen stuff last. So let's still, you know, give you a buffer. You're in the store for 10 minutes checking out. You load it into your car, you drive home 10 or 20 minutes, you unload, then you have to load everything into the freezer. Your ice cream's still not melted by the time you're doing all of that in the Texas heat in your car as well. We just are getting it to you faster, and you don't have to leave your house. It's of course contactless, as we had mentioned before. And then, you know, it's better for the community in terms of admission by taking those unnecessary road trips off of the road. So I love this slide because we all know in Texas, especially living in these huge growing communities, that commutes are a problem, right? So yes, we're not necessarily the world's 100 largest cities, but DFW, Metro, Austin, San Antonio, Houston, they are still huge cities. They're huge areas. And if this by 2030 is going to affect the 100 largest cities by adding 11 minutes to your urban commute, it's probably going to add at least 4 to 7 to ours. So taking those unnecessary trips off of the road and just rethinking, how can I get another good? Is it via drone? Is it, you know, a neuro if you live in Houston? Is it using a DoorDasher or something else? Or do I really need it now? Can I add it to the errand I'm going to run tomorrow or maybe the next day? Like, that's really going to help us too. So I love this slide. I think it's huge. It also really fits into TxDOT's and the street as well, their goal as a state.
Yeah, and gas is going up still, you know, unfortunately. And 100%. So, you know, I'm always thinking multitask, and not just one thing, but you know, the convenience and the timing and everything is key. It's one of the things I love about, you know, this new technology and drone delivery.
Yeah. We touched on it a ton of times. Community response is huge for us. 1 year after we had launched in Christiansburg, this study was conducted by Virginia Tech to understand like community response and the impacts that drone delivery had on the community and places that we could improve. We received overwhelmingly positive feedback and response from that survey. Most people had utilized the service, viewed drones as positive, and we continue to see this type of response in Christiansburg. And we have seen this response in Texas as well since we started community outreach. We launched the news that we were coming to Little Alma and Frisco October 20th of 2020.
We did outreach from that day. I mean, still today, of course, but it's a very different type of outreach and community, like affairs work and plans. So that outreach started October 20th up until our launch date, April 7th. And I would say the biggest things I heard from community members were like, this is so cool. I can't wait to use it. And then, of course, it was a lot of education on, is there a camera in the drone? How does the pilot work? Is it going to be loud? Who are your partners? I mean, all of the questions you all have been asking too, which has
Yes.
been really huge. And I thought coming to Texas and DFW, especially as a Texan myself, that I would get a lot of questions on privacy and like, what about the cameras on the drone? And we do have a camera on the drone. It's on the bottom. However, it's not a live feed. I've already told you we don't have a pilot that's physically flying the drone. So there's no way for anyone to see like what's going on. And what the camera actually is backup navigation. So it's kind of used as an optical lens. So think of like the cursor on your mouse. There are two lenses on the bottom of the drone. And if you cover your eye up and see, you know, something in the distance and do the other one, it's really just showing you the place displacement. And that's what those cameras are for. So in the event that the navigation goes out, the drone can still fly. It's serving as backup navigation. So it can say, oh, that's a safe place to land the package because I know from my optical lenses, that's the house, that's a tree, that's the ground.
So Kendall,
once
we are in Texas. So I'm going to just ask you the question. I mean, what are your concerns when it comes to having somebody shoot your drone down? And, you know, unfortunately, there has been some rogue. And so that, you know, that I know a couple of Texans, they say, if I see that in my yard, I'm going to shoot it. So I just wondered if that was something that you addressed in the beginning.
Yes and no. Like we heard a lot of people asking it more as like a joke with their buddies when they were around. We never got it as a real question. And that is something I brought up too. But mind you, we're not operating in incredibly rural areas. And that's not to say that it's not necessarily a problem in more densely populated areas. But in that same breath, I would argue most cities have like some stipulation where you can't be launching a firearm in the middle of city limits, right? And then it's also a huge violation with the FAA because, mind you, we're certified as an FAA aircraft. So you'd be dealing with a lot of different entities. So I don't think, like, it's not something we've had to worry about. It is a question that comes up pretty often, more in a joking manner. But again, like telling
but it
people,
happens, unfortunately, you know,
right. Asking people like, well, why is this coming up? Why? And generally then when we dig a little deeper, we find like, oh, well, we don't want you surveying our property, or we don't want you, you know, what if we have a kid in the pool? We don't want pictures to be collected. And then I tell them exactly what I just told everyone here about our, you know, cameras and backup navigation. They're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And it's like a non-issue anymore.
Right, I agree.
Yeah. So community response in Texas has been amazing. And I would say like now we get a lot of questions of people saying like, when are you expanding? We want it. We've seen you do so much community outreach. Like when you coming to Plano, when you coming to Richardson, when you coming to Flower Mound, because we are everywhere. And that's honestly my goal. Like I said, I wanted everyone to know Wing was coming here before we launched service. And you know, there really weren't a lot of people who didn't know that we were coming or what Wing was, which was huge to be able to say. Let's see, I got another one. Okay, so this was like the job slide that I wanted to talk about briefly. There are a ton up here offered. Please take a look. If you have questions about anyone of them, just hit me up, let me know. I put my information in the chat and it will be on my last slide as well. I'm happy to get more information. I am by no means a guru or sit on our talent team, so I can't talk to all of these positions. But if there are any like community affairs or policy roles, those are the ones I can talk about a lot more. The jobs that we do have open as we're growing this Texas team, you know, they're more ground support, our pilots,
I think there's a few other ones like merchant management, so more on the business operations strategy, and then grounds crew. So we are looking for people who have their 107, can be visual observers, things like that. So
What
it
about,
is
and
true.
you kind of mentioned it, but Edward was asking, do you have to live within the 6-mile radius to receive a package? So, you know, that in itself is yes. And then Marcy is asking, is there a minimum order?
So right now we don't charge for delivery. So whatever the merchandise goods are, you're paying for that. So if your toothpaste and toothbrush and like mascara are $7.94, that's what you're paying. That is not always going to be the case. We wanted to understand how the community operates with our service. It might be a subscription-based model. It might be one-off. It might be something completely different that I haven't thought of. I'm happy to say I don't sit on that team that has to make that decision. But the feedback that we get from the community of how they're utilizing the service and what they're utilizing it for, I then funnel that back into that team so we can make a decision on how we're going to you know, build that structure out in the future.
And I mean, obviously, you already said the 6 miles is as far as you're going. Eventually, you'd like to go further, which makes a lot of sense. That was Edward's question. But in regards to employment, if you don't have your 107, is that something that you guys would provide the schooling for that, or would that be something that they would have to obtain outside of Wing? You know, getting the 107, and then, you know, especially if they're going to be involved in the actual operation of the delivery.
Yeah, so everyone at Wing doesn't have a 107, just because everyone doesn't need it. But if you're more on the flight operations team, ground support, things like that, where you're really day in, day out, physically like touching the aircraft, because even aircrafts that aren't decommissioned, like I bring a drone with me to every event, and it's retired from a former fleet in Australia, so completely decommissioned, like take all the fun stuff out. I can't fly it. Like I can't touch one of our drones that would be in operation because I don't have certain requirements like my 107. But yes, we help with those requirements, whether it's a 107 or if it's some other type of skill that you would need to be able to perform your job. We're again, like really trying to find the right people for a culture fit who want to stay and believe in the mission and like love aviation and truly believe that this is the new wave of today and the future, rather than someone who we're going to like, you know, here's your 107 and they don't really want to be here. So yeah, we help them to be able to utilize and maintain and get all of those certifications for whatever the job role is.
Well, at this point, you know, with employment, diversity is so important. Is Wing doing anything specifically to reach out to maybe employment that, you know, that wouldn't necessarily be exposed to aviation, or, you know, outside of the Little Elm and Frisco, but yet, you know, bringing different backgrounds, like you said. I mean, you know, that's the personality is so important, and, you know, a team player and a problem solver. So I was just wondering what Wing is doing for employing diverse teams.
Yeah, I think our recruiting team is doing a really good job at that. I know that they go to a lot of job fairs and have like a lot of different like strategies on their docket and their goals. I'm not entirely sure what they are just because I don't work on that team. So I don't feel comfortable like super speaking to what they're doing, but I know that they're in a lot of different places, like trying to recruit talent, whether it's at universities or different type of events or different like IUD places for them to go, because diversity and inclusion is really huge for us. That's something that we try to be inclusive of, to bring people from all different types of background on. Like you'll see people like even on my team alone, I do a lot of course, the outreach, but we get asked by a lot of student groups, hey, we're like building a drone for this program or to compete in this. Can you bring like pilots or whomever to talk to the kids? And like when I say kids, I like truly mean kids. Like we have talked and mentored, I think they were like 7 to 12-year-olds, and they're asking us questions. Like this was specifically a group of women at Wing. And I brought pilots, system engineers, our front end engineers, me, some marketing people, like try to get a little bit of everything from different work streams. So people and these girls could truly understand, like, if you're interested in this and you love science and math today, amazing, you can stick with that. But if it's not your jam later on, like I don't have a background in science and math, but I'm still working for this really cool company, right? So there are so many different ways you can get into this. And we really try to tap into that for workforce, what is it, like 2038 now? So we can like really start to tell them, like, one, these jobs didn't exist 10 years ago. Right. 2, you can't just be thinking, and I think Texas does a really good job at this because of the aptitude tests and like kind of placing you in a little bit of a track going into 8th grade, but saying, hey, there are so many different opportunities, like let's dive in and see what's out there. And then we'll speak to a lot of school groups because, you know, you can ask them today, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think that's almost stifling what they're going to be, because this job, this company did not exist 10 years ago. So just asking them, what do you want to be when you grow up? They have bumpers already on. So
yes.
kind
I'm
of put
glad
them
to
in,
see that
what do
you're
you
going.
like?
Yeah, I'm glad to see that you're going out to, you know, children up to 7, because especially girls, you know, you know, at a certain point, they pretty much know what they're going to do because they see an example, you know, they see a mentor. So having that exposure to, you know, the aviation industry and engineering is, and math, and I had arts degree, so, you know, communication. And I didn't think I was going to operate a drone, but I you know, it's a tool just like everything else, and I can be creative with it. So I love that idea. So thank you so much, Kendall, for participating. Yeah. Okay, let's see. We've got more chats here. Frisco, what is the population within your delivery range currently? On average, how many deliveries per day do you make, and how many drones are stationed at your hub? How many are available for flight and at any one time? So that was a lot.
I can't answer any of those questions.
Okay.
I know the answers, but it's all like proprietary in how we run our operations. And because like competitors are on the call, I definitely can't answer them, unfortunately. But
well, I know that Frisco.
They're great questions. I just can't answer them.
And, you know, Frisco, it used to be a farm area, you know, ranchers, you know, cattle ranchers. And I mean, just in the short time I've lived in Texas, there hardly is any empty lots at this point. So it's definitely highly populated. But I know that you can get some of that information just on Google and the government. And then, you know, can you say a little bit about, you know, like on the average, how many deliveries you do now, or is that something that you can't really talk about either? Okay.
Yeah, we don't talk about it, unfortunately. So I think I have 2 slides left, but please keep dropping your questions in the chat. They're so good. This one's a little bit of, there is talking on it. So if you can't hear it, please let me know.
Okay.
Texas is very significant for Wing.
Yeah, turn it up just a little bit.
There's tons of general aviation in Texas. We're constantly doing community outreach with the other players in the airspace. There's a lot of factors to consider when you're launching in an airspace like this based on the air traffic here.
When we launch a service in a new city, we don't just have to think about all of the things that we control. There's also a lot of work that we need to do reaching out to other parties. So it's regulators, the city, and then lastly, probably most importantly, is the community itself. What we offer, it is new, and we understand that it's different. And so when we go into these neighborhoods, that's a sacred space, and we take that responsibility really seriously. So we have deep consultation with the communities long before we ever start doing deliveries. And that way we're able to hear their feedback. We can make changes to our offering, our platform, the way things work, to make sure that we're offering a service that brings real value to the communities here.
So there was a question, any issues with the aircraft and the weather, the heat, specifically on performance? And then another question, is Wings making a profit?
Wing, no, we're not making a profit, as you can imagine, because we're not charging anything for our service, but that, like, we're a startup, we're in investing rounds, and we're just seeing what we can do so we can get there. If you look at a lot of other startup companies, they're not even turning a profit either. But it's really, how can we get the approvals to operate everywhere, and then we'll start to make that profit.
Right.
And then in terms of issues with the aircraft or weather or heat, like, yes, of course there are issues. I can't talk about a ton of them. You're asking such a good question. I feel so bad because I can't always address these. But there are, like, for us, we set our standard of heat, or on the opposite side, if it's like snow or cold. But also, if you can imagine, like I said, we operate in Finland, in Helsinki. That climate is so different, a 180, than what we have in Texas. And that is why we chose to operate in such contrasting areas, to show that we do have the capability and viability to operate somewhere that is extreme heat and extreme cool temperatures. And of course, there are times when it's like, crazy storms are coming through. Like, we're obviously turning our operations off. Same with when I've been up in Frisco, when I physically cannot open my car door because it is so windy. As you can imagine, like, we're just in like a standstill until the wind cools down a little bit.
Well, a lot of great questions, and really appreciate the participation with our audience. A time is really up. Do you want to just wrap up real quick, Kendall? And again, Kendall's going to put her information on the chat, so you can reach out to her later. And again, she'll answer any questions, or reach out to the person that may be more qualified to answer that question for you. So feel free. But go ahead, let's just wrap it up real quick, Kendall. I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, no problem. I'll just play this last video, and then I'll leave you to the next one.
Okay.
This is what I was talking about, like what we did in 2021, and it was a lot. So we're continuing to, move forward in 2022 and beyond, so we can, truly bring drone delivery to every community globally. Oh, there we go.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I dropped my information in the chat. If you have any questions or follow up, please feel free to reach out. Like I mentioned, I'm really sorry I couldn't answer a lot of your questions, but they were really great questions. And I'm here, we're in the community, and I hope if you're here in North Dallas that I see you in person soon, or you experience drone delivery from Wing itself. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kendall. And I'm so appreciative that you guys did choose the DFW area to launch some of your first your first programs, because I think that we do have an understanding and appreciation for the services that you can provide. So thank you so much. Again, I want to let everyone know this is recorded, so if you need to come back and look at some of the items that they were talking about, or the issues or the questions, you can show it with your friends. And this video itself will be great for for classmates. So if you're a teacher, this would be a great opportunity to educate of what's happening here in the DFW area. There's going to be a survey, so for feedback, I really appreciate everyone filling out a survey, because we are on our 22nd workshop, and we have another one coming up soon, and we really want to hear what you want to see on these workshops, so that we can continue to educate and talk about it and keep drones in a constant conversation, especially with our general public. So thanks again, Kendall, I appreciate it. And now we have Sharon Rossmark, and she's going to be interviewing Stephanie from Drone Express. Oh, it's muted, Sharon, so go ahead and unmute.
3 years of doing Zooms and we're still forgetting about that mute button. Well, good morning or good afternoon to everyone. And thanks, Maggie, for the introduction. And thanks to Kendall for an overview about Wing. I found that very interesting. So I'm also interested in what Stephanie Jones, our next speaker. So joining me for this conversation is Stephanie Jones, Associate Vice President of Drone Express. And before we dive into my questions for the interview portion, Stephanie has prepared a few slides to provide you with an overview about Drone Express and their drone delivery operations. So Stephanie, please take a few minutes to further introduce yourself and then share your presentation.
Sharon, first of all, thank you for having me today. It's truly an honor to be here. Just to speak a little bit about myself, because this is really about Drone Express and the great things that we're doing. But yes, like Sharon said, my name is Stephanie Jones. I'm Associate Vice President of Flight Operations for Drone Express. Drone Express is a logistics company focused on bringing safe, reliable, autonomous, eco-friendly package delivery throughout the country. I help empower a diverse team of proficient, independent thinkers whose mission is to make life easier by bringing customers what they need and winning where they want it. I'm also proud to say I'm the first Black woman to bring drone delivery operations to Atlanta, Georgia. And I will be spearheading initiatives to expand in various cities and locations, hopefully somewhere in your town. And it's very important for me to always represent that I am someone who puts safety first in all of our operations. And I love demonstrating safe, efficient, sustainable, last mile drone delivery done with precision. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. And let me share the screen so I can tell you more about who we are. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes, we can see it. Looks great.
Yes, excellent. All right, so get to that next slide. Get my, let's see if I activate it here. All right, so I think it's always appropriate to speak about what our mission is, because it's really based off of the vision of our incredible CEO, Beth Filippo, who I will be speaking more about in our slides. But I'd just like to say that we are powered by a diverse team, once again, of proficient, eco-conscious, independent thinkers whose mission is to make your life easier by bringing you what you need, when and where you need it. I want to just point out that our mission could have just basically said, hey, we're using drones to make people's lives easier, right? but our CEO wanted to make sure that people understood what we are made of, right? And I believe that we are an incredibly strong team because we are diverse. We're very proficient and eco-conscious. We understand that it's also our responsibility to protect Mother Earth as well as we can. And we're doing that by bringing drone delivery to communities all around the country. We're currently working with the FAA towards our Part 135. We do not have our Part 135 yet, but we are in partnership with the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, who are helping us actually get our 135, and they're our lead participant in the Beyond program. So that's another thing that it's good to say is how we're a part of that Beyond program. This is our beautiful CEO, Beth Flippo. I know this is kind of like a little short paragraph. If you don't mind, I'd just like to expand on who she truly is and what she means to me. I basically started with Drone Express because of her, right? I was new in this world of drones, and I knew that women were pretty much outnumbered in this industry, which isn't a bad thing, right? It's just that I really didn't know what I wanted to do with the technology and with my license. So I did some research and I came across Drone Express, and of course, ultimately Beth Flippo, who I knew would be someone who I could learn how to do this thing correctly. By expanding just on who our CEO is, I just like to say that Beth Flippo is an accomplished embedded engineer with over 20 years of experience in the finance and technology industries. She has designed and developed advanced mobile communication solutions and is passionate about robotics and unmanned systems. In partnership with the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, Drone Express is currently working towards our Part 135, like I said before. And we also wanted to talk about the parent company, Telegrid, in which Beth was the president for. She was over the engineering manufacturer, the engineering department, where they focused on mobile communications and unmanned robotic systems. Beth's leadership of the engineering team led to an expanded product line and further adoption into major Department of Defense agencies worldwide. Beth began her career in the finance industry in New York City, where she designed systems for quantitative trading and financial analysis for equity transactions on the New York Stock Exchange. Her experience includes several prestigious investment banks and brokerage firms, including UBS, Payne Weber, Cantor Fitzgerald, and Goldman Sachs. Beth holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Computer Science from the Thomas Watson School of Engineering and Applied Science at the State University of New York at Binghamton. She's a licensed drone pilot, and we always tease her because she never wants to fly a drone, but at least she's got that license, right? With the FAA, and has a radio operator license, the W2QNB from the FCC. Beth resides in the birthplace of aviation, Dayton, Ohio. I am too, an Ohioan. And she has 4 beautiful children and an incredibly supportive husband who we all appreciate as well. So with that said, you know, I think it's just fair that before we talk about our incredible company, that we shed true light and respect on the woman who has made it possible for us. So as we all know, when it comes to drone delivery services, we're basically trying to solve a problem. And this, I'm going to move this to the side if you all don't mind. And the problem is that traditional delivery methods just can't meet the demand of the modern day consumer. Whether it's because our gas prices are high, or we're busy, we're working at home, whatever the case may be, the traditional delivery methods are not meeting the demand of the modern day consumer. Why? What are the major problems? Because they're slow, expensive, and of the pollution, right? So when I speak about slow, it means basically that ground delivery is notoriously time consuming due to complicated routing, labor inefficiencies, and traffic congestions. I don't know about you, but I've ordered DoorDash. I've gotten frustrated with them because of how long it would take for my food to come. It would be cold. Sometimes they would forget to give me my beverage. So then I would switch over to Uber Eats and the same thing, you know, it'd take a long period of time. My stuff was just coming back, it's just too slow. And customers are going to let people know that they are unhappy. And we really want to help companies avoid this type of feedback. It's expensive. The current delivery methods are facing significant operating cost increases due to reliance on rising fuel, labor, and vehicle prices. Once again, I could order something that, you know, would say my order equaled up to $12, but after the fees and, you know, this and that, I'm paying $25 for a burger, a fry, and a drink. And I get it, it's for the convenience. But as a consumer who understands I need a delivery method to be incorporated in my everyday, when something is expensive, it just makes it too difficult to continue to be able to take advantage of that type of service. And then the pollution, right? It's gas. Let's just be honest. The gas-powered vehicles contaminates the air we breathe and it pollutes the earth. And I know we have to go here, I know we have to go there, and I know those are important places, but at the same time, we have to be honest about the fact that one of our problems is truly the pollution that we're emitting from our vehicles, from our gas-powered vehicles. Right. So of course, whenever you're a company and you have recognized problems, right, you try to gear yourself around finding those solutions. And so the solution that we have found to be able to counter those problems is our autonomous aerial vehicles, which provide a scalable solution for last mile delivery. It is already proven that there's a demand for safe, efficient last mile delivery options. So it's not that we're trying to prove anything, we're just trying to show that we can solve some of these problems that is making it hard for this last mile delivery situation. So one, we are fast, right? I love how this slide is saying that we travel as the crow flies, right? Above every obstacle on the ground. Safety is first, right? And that includes not hitting any obstacles for that drone to, you know, get out of control and maybe fall and hurt someone or destroy some type of property. We're reliable, right? We have our autonomous behavior guarantees a smooth delivery by eliminating human delays, right? It's traffic, it's, you know, it's a whole lot of things that make it possible for autonomous behavior to be reliable, right? And then safety, once again, something that you'll hear me speak about all the time at work, outside of work, whether I'm flying my drones recreationally or training someone or actually helping our pilots understand how to use our drones. Safety is our first priority. And so again, a solution is to make sure that our unmanned aircraft follow the same safety regulations as existing air travel. So we basically want to be the safest aircraft in the sky, right? And we also want to be eco-friendly when we're talking about that solution of pollution that's being emitted by our gas cars. Deliveries are powered by renewable energy, drastically reducing our carbon footprint. And I just hope that the viewers here today really understand that this isn't a technology that's going to take over jobs, right? This isn't something that is going to dismiss the fact that we are responsible for one another. This technology is actually saying that we want to give people what they need, when they need it, and where they want it, right? We want the people to know that we are reliable. You can count on us to eliminate all of the things that are causing, problems with customers, or with deliveries actually getting to customers how they want them to get there. You can rely on us to be safe, and you can also rely on us to be eco-friendly. And we just ask you to join us in those efforts in whatever you're doing.
So Stephanie, before we run out of time, I'd like to spend a few minutes having you talk about maybe your service in terms of the type of drone that you're using and where it's manufactured. I think the audience, given that they are Part 107, many of them are Part 107 and in the industry, they want to know a little bit more about your delivery as a service, as you have on the screen there now, and maybe the drone that you're using and where it's manufactured. Let's start there.
Okay, excellent. Well, it's proprietary, right? Made in America. We take pride in that. Even our batteries are from America. So our drones are basically, are you asking the question of how we actually use them in an operation, or just what capabilities our drones have?
Well, both. Let's talk because we don't have a lot of time left, but let's talk about your drone. Is it a quadcopter, octagon? What exactly are you flying, and what weight does it carry, and where are you flying currently in terms of the type of missions that you're flying? So a little bit more details there.
Okay. So we're flying a hexacopter, right? And we're able to carry a payload of 5 pounds. We're currently, some of our partners are Kroger, Papa John's, we're in Dayton, we're in Atlanta, and of course we're looking to expand in other locations and cities. And so we are actually delivering pizzas here in Sandy Springs for Papa John's, and it's pretty cool to see how the people really embrace us there. And we fly autonomously. Although because we don't have our Part 135, we do have fail safes in place to make sure that we are operating BLOS all the time, so that we can know where the drone is, control it if we need to, and take it to a safe landing zone if we need to as well.
So are you using visual observers along the path, the flight path? Is that how you're controlling that?
Yes, well, it really matters how far our radius is, right? In a 1 mile radius, we don't need any visual observer in the middle. But if we carry out a 3 mile operation, then we definitely want to make sure that there's someone at that 2 mile point to make sure that when that pilot loses a visual line of sight, there is someone in the middle that can continue sight onto that drone. So it really is basically based upon the distance in which we are operating.
And what are you seeing in terms of community acceptance? Since you are delivering pizzas, that's got to be a big hit. What are you seeing in terms of community acceptance of drone delivery?
Oh, they love us. They love us. The acceptance is incredible. And I think that as long as they know that we're not there to spy on them or to, hurt them, and that we're actually here to create a really cool, unforgettable experience for this particular customer, Papa John's specifically, it's basically giving their customers a unique experience that nobody else could do, no other pizza company could do, right? And so they are basically they stop by, ask us if we want something to drink or any food. I mean, they are really embracing us more than we thought that they would, especially our elders and our youth.
I see. And then you're working with Kroger also. What type of products are you delivering for them?
So we're delivering not a bunch of groceries, but as long as that payload is 5 pounds, we can deliver whatever Kroger has in stock to that customer. Let's say, for example, if you went to get groceries and you're preparing dinner and you forgot that you grabbed the garlic, right? Or you forgot the salt and pepper, then you wouldn't have to leave your home to go back to Kroger to get those items. We can get those for you in less than 3 minutes.
So how does the customer, let's talk about that process. So I forgot the garlic. Are they going on an app that you have, or they're calling Kroger? How does that work for them in terms of being able to make this whole, how does it start and how does it end?
Yes, so there is an app, and the customer logs on and they say that, first of all, the app lets them know if they are within the radius to be eligible for drone delivery. then it's their option to choose if they would like to get their items delivered via drone or not, right? And so once they say yes, then in the app, they can choose what it is exactly that they want. A lot of the items in a lot of different apps, like in Kroger, for example, they will have how much each item may weigh. And so they can fill their cart up based upon the weight of those items. And once that weight meets the max, then those items are then sent to our pod and then deployed from our pod to that location autonomously.
And what hours do you all operate? Is it like between 9 and 5, between 7 and 2? You know, what determines your hours of operation?
Whenever our clients want us, right?
Okay.
And so if Kroger is a 24-hour Kroger, then we'll be a 24-hour operation.
Okay.
And I think it's important for our customers, our clients to know that, our partners to know that we are there with them every step of the way. If you all are opening your doors, we're opening our doors. When you close your doors, we're closing our doors.
And where are you departing from? I see on your slide now that you have rooftop drone purchase. Are you flying off the top of Kroger's or Papa John's?
Not yet.
Okay.
We actually, it's really a matter of the best location that we can launch safely, right? Sometimes that's in the back of the building. Sometimes that's on the side of the building. Sometimes that's out in the parking lot. And then we also have to make sure that we have power to make sure that we can power our trailers, correct? And
Right.
so and what is the best place to allow us to have visual line of sight, right? We don't want to be in the back of a building and you have a large obstacle that keeps you from seeing, you know, the west or east. So we try to find a location that allows us to maximize our visual line of sight as well.
So from a standpoint of the industry, what do you see as the biggest hurdle that the industry must overcome for you to be able to scale drone delivery in your markets and expand?
That's a good question. I think once again, because I'm just a safety, I think it's all about if we can say that we can do this safely, especially when we're talking about autonomous state, right? And not some signal can come and interfere with our signal and cause a drone to lose its course or to do something that we don't want it to do. I think that as long as we can show that we can truly carry out these operations safely, as well as have some type of setup that allows our drones to constantly communicate with each other, I think that we will definitely be exactly what the community needs and wants, and can rely on as well to make sure that they're safe.
So before we close out, I want to talk about hiring because I know that's a huge question amongst the pilot community. Are you all hiring? And if so, who are you hiring in terms of experience and what are you all looking for in the individuals?
Oh, we're definitely looking to grow our company in all departments, right? If you are a drone pilot and you want to join a fast growing company and you want to grow in that company, then definitely give us a call. If you have your Part 107, that's great, right? If you don't have your Part 107, then we are open to visual observers who are planning to become pilots, right? Who want a career in this drone industry. And so if that is you, if you like to build drones, if you have a strong sense of programming, please, if you see this, my email right here, employment, please send your your resume to info@droneexpress.com. You can send a letter of interest if you're scared that your background doesn't really reflect what you really want when it comes to the drone industry or a career in drones. And if you want to be a partner, if you want to be another one of our stores that actually can benefit from our services, please hit us up at partner@droneexpress.com. If you want to be another one of our great investors, please go to invest@droneexpress.com. And of course, if there's any other questions, I know our talk is short and I'm speaking fast, so forgive me for stumbling over my words sometimes as well. But my cell phone is there and my work address is there as well, if you'd like to connect to speak more about the things that we're doing and the opportunities that we are providing for everybody in this country.
And are you hiring pilots or contractors?
Pilots, our pilots,
Okay, so you're bringing them on as employees.
right, full-time employees, free benefits, all the whole gambit. So
And right now, is that primarily in the Dayton area and in the Atlanta metro area where you are?
yes.
Okay.
And we're expanding, and we're also looking for people who are willing to relocate, right? Who are open to like finding, helping us find new locations and to operate and specialize in one specific type of location to help us stay safe in our operations. So yes, we're very open to all of the above.
Well, great. Well, to our audience out there, Stephanie has a wealth of information on this last slide here in terms of partnerships, if you're looking to invest and any employment. Do we have any questions, Maggie? I didn't get a chance to check the chat.
No, but I do have a couple questions.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
In regards, thank you, Stephanie. This has been really neat to see, a different company doing some similar things, but and both, priority of being safe. But on delivery, now with Wing, they drop the package. Do you actually land the drone? And do you have concerns if you do land the drone that a pedestrian would come up and mess with it? I guess is really what I'm trying to say.
I love how you're thinking, because you're thinking safety first, right? So we actually use a winch system that actually lowers the drone down, just like Wing. Except we actually have a pilot and a VO on site as our fail-safe. We want to make sure that that drone is like, there's no child wanting to, grab the package before, it's ready to drop. We don't want a dog to jump out and attack it. So we have that fail-safe right there on site, but we do use a winch system that drops the package down and then raises back up before heading back to the base.
And Sam Scully asks, I understand you hire pilots. Do you hire back-end roles for business or marketing?
Definitely.
When you do the deliveries, do you specifically because one of the biggest concerns like UPS and FedEx is people stealing packages from their front door. Do you practice delivering in a more like the backyard or somewhere where it's more secure?
Well, our app actually gives our customer an indicator that lets them know that their package is on the way, and let them know when that package has been dropped. I can't speak much about the new equipment that we're adding to our drone to make sure that we're letting the customer know that their package is there and it's safe and is where they want it to be, and so that they don't have to worry about that. And then, of course, if they don't come there, let's say within a minute or two, then we do show courtesy by having our drone pilot or VO, if we're not busy, if we're not being called to another location, to stand there and make sure that they receive their package. Now we get a chance to wave and say thank you for being a part of this operation.
Marcia asked, do you operate at night? Which I think you already answered yes. If Kroger's open 24/7, you're going to deliver 24/7. But do you take any special security measures? In other words, does it have a camera? Does it have lights? Does it have a speaker so you can speak to the customer?
You're asking incredible questions, so I can't speak on, but I can say right now what we have. We do not have a camera on there right now. But we do have our obstacle avoidance lights to make sure that we can be seen at night. We also have a fail-safe that if that battery at any time is low, then it automatically returns to home. But yeah, we haven't had the opportunity to fly at night yet because, daylight savings, but we are looking forward to the community seeing our aircraft light up the sky.
What about fly time? I mean, you talk about, you need to see beyond, you need to see the drone and have observers on it. But fly time, how often do you have to change the batteries?
Well, for safety, we change the battery after every flight.
That's
No
great.
matter what the case may be. We want a fresh battery in that drone every time we deploy it.
Thank you so much for answering all those questions. And I'm sure there's going to be some of the audience reaching out to you. And we do hope you come into the DFW area also, because I think that, you know, with the attitude of Wing coming in and, you know, the positive response, I think you'd also have a positive response for our community. So thank you again, really appreciate that. And Sharon, do you have any last comments?
No, I just wanted to thank Stephanie also for sharing with us about Drone Express. We look to continue to see you all grow, and I'm looking for you to come into the Chicagoland area where I'm at. So hope to see you all here soon. So thank you again, Stephanie, for your time, and Maggie, back over to you.
By the way, I love the fact that this is all women today. Of course, Evan's about to come on, and I don't mean to put him down, but it's so nice to see that we have interests, and we're on board when it comes to, you know, making our lives better. And one of the things that haven't been mentioned is that we are saving lives in the aspect of, you know, it's always dangerous to go out and you know, drive your vehicle, just that, and it's not just about time, but it's about safety. And the fact is that, you know, we have these machines and these tools to prevent any harm to humans. So I think that that's also wonderful. And we're going to go on to Evan Morelli, because Evan always talks about, you know, the safe practices. And one of the things that I wanted to ask Evan in particular about is, you know, just the drone deliveries and what concerns that you might have to the deliveries and being safe. So Evan, are you there?
I am. Let me go ahead and
Hi,
share the screen.
thank you so much for joining us again today.
So can you all see my screen all right? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes, we can see it. Yes.
Okay, hi, my name is Evan Morelli. I'm going to be talking about drone piloting today in kind of conjunction with autonomous delivery and some of the back-end considerations that it seems like these companies, you guys have really taken into consideration, not only from a safety standpoint of you have giant, you know, robots flying around in the air with spinning blades and how to make that safe for an uninformed populace, but also how to set a good, you know, to get something like a normalized drone interaction to just be in the background of society. As we know that as technology gets to the point where it's more advanced, it moves to the background. We don't notice it nearly as much. That requires a lot of front end work as community members and industry officials on our end to make the experience smooth, perceiving very safe. So the average person, that they're not thinking that somebody's looking into your window and that this technology just works. So I'm going to talk about some of that back end, that what you're not seeing and that has already been utilized by these companies, as well as some of the things that we can do as individual operators in order to help further that overall advocacy. So on-site considerations, whenever you're doing any kind of drone operation, whether you're coming from like a single individual point, or if you're an individual operator and you're trying to like scan roofs, or you're working at a construction site, or you're doing some kind of site assessment or something for an individual client, considerations, your individual dynamics of each location are going to be different, but you can take those and set a set of rules of like, what are the general things I need to look at that interact with my technology that can cause me to have issues and either cause a safety hazard or to me to not complete or attain my objective. So number one thing is how to maintain visual line of sight. If you're in the Atlanta area or you're here in DFW, there's tall buildings. There's also going to be multiple story buildings. There's going to be objects that are going to be in the way, that if you're trying to do any route that's not just a straight line in front of you, you're going to run into visual line of sight issues. So when you're doing autonomous, you know, doing beyond visual line of sight, having some sort of tracking scenario, whether that be an RTM style, like general broad radar based monitoring program, or whether you're using visual observers, you've got to be able to determine, okay, well, if my drone's going around the corner, how am I going to be able to account for the 4 mandatory desires of position, attitude, altitude, and speed? I need to know all 4 of those things at the exact same time, always. And if I'm going to be flying outside of civil twilight in the morning or in the evening, how can I make sure I'm keeping the night flying requirements of the strobes, the ability to, if there's manned aircraft in your airspace, to be able to see my drone or my visual observers or my pilot in command to be able to see the drone, or in the case of automated delivery, the customer who may be sitting at their front porch and the drone comes in, they need to be able to see where that drone is so they're not standing in the wrong place that could possibly cause an incident. Your drones are also going to be subject to weather visibility limitations for visual line of sight flights, such as 3 nautical miles to be able to see. So weather will become a factor, and especially in areas like DFW, your weather in Fort Worth may not be your weather in Plano, which may not be your weather in Seagoville. They're very different areas. There's a lot of drift to do with urban heat island effects, and areas like the northern suburbs are much more flat and plains-like versus down in South Dallas, which is much more of a wetlands, and they're going to have very different weather probably. RF interference. This is another huge critical one that has to do with buried power lines in neighborhoods, but also obviously in urban environments with all sorts of different electrical interference, either whether it be emergency response, whether it be anything truly that gives off an radio frequency in a magnetic field can cause issues with the way that you interact with your drone, and especially in like long ranges, whether you're using like a 2.4 gigahertz connection or even down for like extended range beyond visual line of sight, like a 900 or megahertz or millihertz or a 1.3 gigahertz connection, that can be an issue. So you want to take consideration of, okay, where's my flight path going? What am I going to be going around? Am I going around train tracks? Am I going around a parking garage? Am I going around any sort of large metallic infrastructure, such as like a water tower? That can absorb and cause issues with your connection, especially if you start shading outside of visual line of sight. Also, if you're running an individual operation, you got to be careful that if you're launching from an area that, like, let's say it's a parking lot or some kind of concrete structure that has rebar underneath the concrete, that may possibly affect your initial calibration compensation or your compass calibration, right? So you want to make sure that that is calibrated properly. If you're running an individual operation outside of a building, you may want to look at, instead of trying to launch off of a concrete parking lot, you should always probably have a landing pad with you. That always makes things a lot more kind of set and standard. But I would consider taking off on a flat piece of grass and try to get as far away from metal as humanly possible. Keep in mind that your GPSs, those actual modules inside the drone, they go bad. They don't last forever. They start to get affected by the Earth's magnetic field, and they do eventually expire and get less and less accurate the more you use them and the more you subject them to strong RF interference. So it's something to be very careful of.
Evan, I've got a real quick question.
Sure.
As you see more and more of the drone delivery services in the air, as a pilot, let's say, I'm an adjuster and I have my 107 and I'm doing roof inspections. How important, and maybe this is more of an opinion, but, first of all, we know we have to give the right of way to aircraft. And we need to give the right of way for first responders. But what about the consideration for drone deliveries? I mean, maybe this is why it's so important for remote ID. I know a lot of people are saying, oh no, but to be aware, I know Airlinks has something where they will give you an idea of where other aircraft is, including drones. So I just wondered if, yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so UTMs, Universal Traffic Management, is most likely going to be the future that we're going to be dealing with when it comes to autonomous delivery flying. As you can see from this graphic that I have here, that you create these corridors, these virtual corridors. Maggie, if you recall, when we went down to Corpus Christi, what that particular UTM that they were discussing used small localized micro radars that basically scanned the airspace and gave up-to-date information, and used actually kind of like a subset of blockchain for peer-to-peer location sharing between different drones that were available in an urban environment. And that's most likely what I would imagine that you would see, because the fact is manned aircraft are going to have a factor that unmanned aircraft don't really have to the same extent, and that is human error. and emergencies and diversions and things like that that are not going to be, quite so cut and dry that you would have. Because, if you lose a drone, if it crashes into the ground and, has destruction like that, nobody's dying in that scenario. Nobody's at risk of serious injury. However, a manned aircraft, you always 100% have that consideration that somebody can get hurt. So of course you're going to get right of way, but you have to be able to, clear the roads, so to speak. The only meaningful way that I've ever even heard of being able to actually facilitate that to reduce risk of injury for manned aircraft would be a universal traffic management system. So it's paramount, and I think it's a mandatory piece of infrastructure. I always think of in the second Back to the Future movie, they have the little sky lanes and everything. You're going to need to have something of that context in order to actually functionally make this sort of system work. Otherwise, you're going to be front loading your delivery drones with quite a bit of expensive sensors, and as we know, sometimes drones crash. That happens. We just want to limit the cost and the risk of injury when that does occur, and maybe have it so that the drones aren't continuously being front loaded with equipment, which makes them heavier, larger, and when they go down, that's even more of a big deal, right? Because it's very different if you have like a 250 millimeter racing drone hit the ground versus like a Matrice 600 Pro, right? That's going to be very different. So I think UTMs are going to be the answer. It's going to be, because you always have this question of how much do you put on your ground station, how much do you put in the air, and how much do you have streamed via cloud or LTE or 5G to a data center, right? And where do you distribute that technology? Where do you distribute those safety factor compensations to? And so I think UTMs are going to be a good solution to that. And I personally think that from my experiences, like keeping as much off of the drone as possible is the best policy. You want these drones to be as close to a wrench as possible and not so much as like an Android.
Right. And like you said, I mean, I definitely think that there's going to have to be some kind of system, just like, when they started doing roads, and had the road rules, of what side of the road and signaling and,
Sure.
but it's going to be a little bit more challenging, but I am looking forward to everyone working together to make this air safe and equitable. So thank you.
Yeah, so let me go back to connection planning. So in connection planning, especially when it comes to beyond visual line of sights, most of the drones that you're going to have off the shelf, DJI drones, Autel drones, what have you, Skydio drones, they're going to typically come with like a 2.4 gigahertz or 5.8 gigahertz connection plan. That's Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. But if you're doing large zone delivery, you're probably not going to be on those gigahertz connection plans. Instead, you're probably going to be either on an LTE, like a cell phone service, or you're going to be closer to like a 900 megahertz connection plan. Basically P equals VI, what is it? P equals IV. Basically, you have your power, you have your voltage, and you have your frequency. The more voltage that you have, as long as your voltage is consistent and your power, you're going to lower your frequency in order to get more range, but you're going to lower the amount of data. If you're doing transmitting positional data, that's not a whole lot of data, so you can extend your range by lowering your frequency and making that wavelength longer. What happens though is if you're an individual operator, you're going to be moving most likely off of an FCC licensed channel, i.e. if you look at the back of your connection, it'll say FCC ID on it, and that is licensed through the FCC. You have a very specific frequency you operate on, so you're not stepping on other bandwidth's toes, so to speak. But if you're not, you need to make sure you understand how to interact in that environment, right? How to have your ham license, or you're operating on the proper frequencies, because just like violating airspace can be a serious crime, violating somebody else's, licensed our radio bandwidth is also a crime, just through a different federal agency. So you need to be very careful and mindful of that you're not just interacting in the airspace physically, but also from a radio standpoint. So there's that, because also if you're interacting with somebody, maybe like a company that's licensed a bandwidth, and you interact with them, you guys can cancel each other out, right? And that could cause a safety factor on their end, and that can also cause you to lose connection to your drone. And that could be, you're creating a whole mess potentially inadvertently because you didn't follow the rules. So wind and weather conditions, that's the other thing. I would love to see some of the back end logistics of how you guys are considering the fact that, somebody's ordering something off of your service and it's, prescriptions or what have you. But if it's storming outside, is that service not available? Because weather can be a factor, right? OEM flight parameters of wind gust in a very localized area. Your wind gusts on average can be, well within OEM parameters, but the neighborhood you're going to happens to be up on a hill and they're getting much larger wind gusts than you get everywhere else. So that's something to take into consideration, considering the Doppler resolution in DFW, which is really good, is still only like maybe five nodes in all of DFW. So you're not getting a whole lot of resolution. So make sure you check your weather conditions. And if you're running an individual operation, I highly recommend a handheld wind gauge to have on deck where exactly you are, because where exactly you are may have different conditions than what you're looking at on your weather app.
Yeah, and I know True Weather is really working very hard to have weather sensors closer to the ground so that they can really give you more of exact time what the weather's doing. So I think that's going to be really key, like you said, weather, knowing your weather, because it could be different, from depending on where the sensors are. So yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's important.
So recommended equipment, I'll put this up in chat in a minute. I have a pre-flight checklist that has whether you have a lot of this pieces of equipment. You always want to keep extra batteries. Batteries are consumable. Never forget the batteries are consumable. Never forget that they do go bad. They have a lifespan. Replacing your battery every single flight, great idea. Great idea. When I heard that, I loved that, because your batteries do wear over time. And if you've got 12 batteries, you want to be using all 12 of those batteries pretty evenly so that you're really prolonging their battery life. You don't want to have one battery with 30, 40 cycles and one battery with 2.
Right. That's why it's so important to number them and also keep a log, of the use and the voltage that's available there. So,
absolutely.
And when, knowing when you charge and when you're storing, there's a big difference there too.
Absolutely. Yeah. You want to know how many cycles, and that's how many times you have completely charged and discharged your battery. They will have a finite. Different batteries are different. The way you use them is different. If they're getting a lot of high amperage pull, then that's going to affect their wear differently than if you're just doing a really regimental, like doing some sort of like LiDAR scan, right, on a nice sunny, clear, low wind day. That's going to be a very different piece of wear on the batteries versus if you're doing, sketchy weather, high speed flying to deliver life-saving equipment from one hospital to another. Very different environments, very different wear. And so logging that information too is important. Safety equipment, PIC to VO communication. You don't want to be yelling at your visual observer. You want to have maybe a walkie-talkie, first aid kits, because lacerations do occur sometimes. Props break and they're spinning blades. As I mentioned before, the handheld wind gauge. I always recommend anytime you're doing an operation, I don't care if it's on concrete, I don't care if you're in someone's backyard, it doesn't really matter where you are. Use a landing pad. There's always going to be particulate matter and you're inherently pounding air into the ground, and that stuff can get in your drone. You're operating a near solid state computer that's got spinning blades attached to it. Think about dust. All that stuff can get inside of your drone that causes issues. So always use a landing pad so at least you're pounding into a clean space, or at least mitigating the amount of dust pop-up that you're going to have, especially if you're using high sensitive visual capturing equipment such as like a camera or a LiDAR. Like, you're going to be cleaning that lens a metric ton. So, try to mitigate the amount of dirt, try to make your environment as clean as you can possibly make it. And a landing pad is a super effective and simple way to do it.
Evan, I also wanted to point out that, the more and more that we see drones, especially in highly populated areas, and that also means a lot of buildings, specifically high rises. I can think of an incident where 2 buildings, it's like a wind tunnel in between those 2 buildings. And that's definitely something you have to consider when you're going and flying in those areas, because of the way that the wind works around these buildings.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not only just that. The urban environment is a very sophisticated environment to fly in, especially for small drones. Like if you're in an aircraft and you're above the buildings and everything, like there's a certain amount of that. But you've even got, especially in like windy areas like Fort Worth is a really windy city. Um, the wind's going to be hitting those buildings. And where do you think that wind is going when it hits the buildings? It's shooting right up to the roof. So if you're flying, let's say, right, you're trying to take some sort of scan off of the side of a building, you're going to get counter gust that's going to mitigate your down thrust vector as the wind. If you get a gust that's down at the ground level, let's say there's a dart train that's going, like an example with your building, Maggie, you've got a dart train that's going right next to the bottom section of your building that's causing a shear wind gust, right? That shear wind gust, some of it is going to get shot up the side face of the building. That's going to mitigate your lift. And if you're trying to do something with high precision, you're going to get a drop. You're going to get a little bit of dip that can ruin your shot. But moreover, if you're flying something that's got a very low weight to power ratio, like a heavy LiDAR on maybe like the Matrice 600 Pro or something to that effect, that doesn't necessarily have the oomph to just make that not a non-issue, yeah, you could stall. That happens. Just like in a helicopter, as I mentioned a minute ago, drones, multicopters specifically, they operate in beating the ground into submission, just beating the air down below you. And it works a lot like a teeter-totter, that if you get tipped over too far, you list too far, or you pitch too far in one direction or another, and you lose that thrust vector below you, you're going down. And that's going straight down to the ground. You're not going to be able to necessarily recover with a low power to weight ratio drone. So you've got to be very cognizant of the air factors that are occurring around you in a high sophistication environment, such as an urban one, because each different side of the building is going to be a whole different environment. So, and I'll put this pre-flight checklist up here once I'm done speaking here in about 5 minutes. But battery maintenance, this is probably the most important safety factor, and why I was mentioning that you really want to, swapping those batteries out every flight. Great idea. I'm sure that what's done with y'all's company is you probably test the internal resistance of each cell pretty regularly. That's super important. Super important. I believe it's in. Here we go. I'm going to actually go to this one. So battery resistance is measured in milliohms, right? So each cell is going to have a milliohms resistance, and that is going to be your litmus test of actually figuring out where in the life cycle of this battery is each individual cell. As the milliohms go up, and that's done through a balancer. You're not going to be able to do this with retail drone batteries, such as a DJI battery. They've got PCBs built into them that basically gatekeep you from being able to access this information. This is done typically with like an RC plane, RC helicopter, and RC car battery balancer. All right, so it's a slightly different technology, but it's more of like a manual way of doing it, right? The PCBs that are in these retail drone batteries are going to be, they're going to add parasitic drain, but you don't necessarily have to worry about a charged up battery sitting on your countertop going, blowtorch on you and lighting your house on fire. However, you don't get a lot of access to information to be able to understand where the battery is, right? And it will eventually, again, if you leave it just sitting on your shelf, those batteries are going to zero. Eventually, you leave them for 2 months, it's going to zero. If you leave naked batteries or batteries that are just the cakes, the cells, and the leads, right? Very simple. Once you put them into storage mode, which is roughly 3.75 volts per cell, you can put them up on the shelf and they're pretty much stable, I'd say mostly indefinitely. Like maybe after like 5 years, you're probably going to see them start to go down just from random decay, but they'll stay good for a long time and you won't get a lot of creep of the milliohm resistance. Milliohm resistance, what's going to do functionally for you as far as like in detriment to your battery's performance is when you start to pull out like higher amp draws out of your battery, it's going to cause a voltage sag, which is going to make your drone battery. Is it bad to leave the batteries charging all the time? So it depends. So yes and no. If you have like a DJI battery and you have a battery maintainer where you set the batteries in and you have them plugged in and they have this printed copper board regulator, that's fine. the printed copper board regulator that comes from the manufacturer, what it's designed to do is do all the maintenance and regulation of the battery for you. Whether that slowly creeps and accumulates milliohm resistance to your battery, I haven't really been able to tell, because I don't really I try to avoid using those kind of batteries because they go bad a lot quicker. However, as long as you have an interactive board that is regulating the voltage and the discharge and charge of the battery for you, I would say it's safe, because DJI and these other companies will not put a battery out that would not be as safe. Okay, and if you leave them not on a charger, they will eventually drain your battery below 3.5 volts per cell. And at that point, your batteries are essentially dead, because you can't jumpstart them through the PCB. PCB won't let you, and you're going to have to take them to Home Depot and get rid of them and buy new batteries, which can be obviously very pricey. So anyways, my point is with batteries, battery maintenance is extremely important. Putting your naked batteries into storage mode and having them not charged, but at 3.75 volts per cell, is vital for its longevity. I've got a battery here that's 22,000 milliamps, and it's been sitting in storage mode for almost 6 years. It's perfectly brand new. I check its milliohm resistance every month or two, and it just stays perfectly solid. The chemistry of the graphene sheets does not change. So that's a huge important component of these. And this is probably the most important part. The largest hazard to drones is battery maintenance. So I can't.
By the way, Evan, I have my little bag that I have my batteries stored in. So, when I travel, or even when I have them in my my home, I have them in this bag. So I think that's one of the really other aspects of battery safety. Well, we're out of time. So I wanted to
let me answer this question real fast.
Sure,
Do you
sure.
recommend replacing the battery for DJI Mavic Air? So DJI drones, it depends on what you're doing. So the problem with DJI is they're kind of like an Apple product. You got to use their stuff 9 times out of 10. There's very little cross, anything that you can do. So you're kind of locked into using their stuff. And like any technology company, they obsolete their own stuff to make you buy more, because they need to sell widgets. So I would recommend, if you are worried or want to get off of using these batteries that go bad no matter what you do, I would recommend moving to a third-party constructed drone, or making your own drone, or finding one that uses naked batteries, which most, like 99, I can't think of a retail drone brand that'll let you do that. If you notice some of the graphics that we were seeing today, they're all custom built drones, and there's a reason for that, right? These retail drones are meant to be effective tools for people that don't really like maintain their drones personally, but rather want a warranty. And there's a lot of equity in that. And I use DJI drones. I think they're great for what they do. But if you're trying to move to a more advanced ownership model, these sort of drones aren't exactly the best for that. DJI drones, that is. So I don't have
always work for a company like Wing or Drone Express, and obviously utilize their specific drone, and understand the battery life of that particular drone. Wanted to thank everyone again. We really encourage you to fill out those surveys so we know what topics you'd really like to to hear and listen on. If it wasn't for our sponsors like AUVSI, Lone Star Chapter, Drone Plus, Fox Fury, Lens Pens, of course, Women in Drones, Elm Aerial Services, and Chariot, and along with UAS Plus Services. I want to thank our sponsors again. And again, this is recorded, so you can look at this video later on and share it with your constituents, along with maybe, hopefully, students and our youth, so that we can build up our workforce. So again, I want to thank you for joining us. This was our 22nd workshop, and we hope to be doing this for a long time. So thank you, and wish everyone a great weekend. Take care, and we'll see you next month.